Here's something strange about modern life. Some of the most intelligent people, the most responsible people, the most capable people often end up living a life that quietly feels wrong. Not chaotic, not broken, just misaligned. From the outside, everything looks impressive. They built a stable career. They handled responsibilities. They followed the path that seemed logical. People around them might even admire their life. But late at night, when everything becomes quiet, a strange thought appears. A thought they rarely say out loud. How did I end up here? Because this was never supposed to be the destination. At some point in the past, they imagined a very different version of their life. A life that felt more alive, more curious, more connected to who they really were. But somewhere along the way, something subtle happened. They didn't fail. They didn't make catastrophic mistakes. They simply did what intelligent people are trained to do. They made the most reasonable decision every time. The practical job, the safe opportunity, the path that looked responsible. And every step made sense. Every decision looked correct. But there's a strange consequence to living this way. When every decision is guided by logic, something important slowly disappears. Your life becomes efficient, but not necessarily meaningful. You build a life that works, a life that functions, a life that others respect. But sometimes, in quiet moments when the noise fades, a realization begins to surface. Not dramatic, not loud, just uncomfortable. You did everything right, so why does your life feel slightly wrong? And that question leads to something most people never realize. Sometimes, the biggest mistake in life is not making the wrong decisions. It's making the right ones for the wrong reasons. One of the reasons intelligent people end up in the wrong life is because they are extremely good at adapting. From a young age, smart people learn how systems work. School systems, career systems, social systems. They quickly understand what is rewarded, what is expected, what leads to success. And once they understand the rules, they follow them very well. They study the right subjects, choose the practical path, take the opportunity that offers security, make decisions that look responsible, and each step works. Teachers approve, employers reward them, family members feel proud, society confirms they are moving in the right direction. So naturally, they continue. But adaptation has a hidden cost. Every time you adapt to what the system rewards, you move slightly further away from asking a deeper question. What do I actually want? Not what makes sense, not what looks impressive, not what earns approval, but what genuinely feels meaningful. The problem is, systems don't reward that question. They reward performance, productivity, predictability, and intelligent people are very good at delivering those things. So they keep adapting. They become more efficient, more responsible, more successful. But slowly, their identity begins forming around expectations rather than curiosity. They become the reliable one, the capable one, the person who always makes the smart decision. And over time, those smart decisions accumulate. They build a career, a routine, a structure, a life. But because the life was shaped by adaptation, it may never have been shaped by desire. And that's the quiet trap. You didn't choose the wrong life. You adapted into it, step by step, decision by decision, until one day, you pause long enough to notice something strange. The life you built works perfectly well, but when you look at it honestly, it feels more like the life you were trained to build than the life you actually wanted. There is another reason intelligent people often end up living the wrong life, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. In fact, it happens because they are intelligent. Smart people are very good at reading signals. They quickly notice what the world rewards. They notice which behaviors get approval, which decisions earn praise, which paths receive validation from others. And, naturally, they move in that direction. Not consciously, not strategically, just gradually. Because human beings are extremely sensitive to approval. From childhood, approval teaches us what is acceptable. A good grade brings praise. A responsible decision brings encouragement. Choosing the right path brings admiration. Over time, the brain begins linking approval with safety. Validation feels good. Recognition feels good. Being seen as successful feels good. So the mind quietly learns something. Do more of what gets approval. And intelligent people are excellent at this. They quickly recognize the patterns. They follow them efficiently. But there is a hidden problem with living this way. Approval is not the same as meaning. The world can reward a life that does not actually belong to you. You can be praised for a career that doesn't excite you, admired for achievements that don't fulfill you, respected for choices that slowly disconnect you from yourself. And because the feedback from the world is positive, it becomes harder to question the direction. After all, if everyone says you are doing well, why would you assume something is wrong? This is where a subtle psychological force begins shaping identity. A force the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche noticed more than a century ago. Nietzsche observed that most people do not truly choose their values. Instead, they inherit them from the culture around them. He called this phenomenon the herd mentality, not because people are weak, but because humans naturally look to the group for guidance. The group signals what is good, what is respectable, what is worthy of admiration. And slowly, those signals become the map people follow. Success begins to look very specific. A certain career, a certain lifestyle, a certain definition of achievement. And intelligent people often follow that map extremely well. They optimize their decisions. They make strategic moves. They pursue the paths that seem most rewarding. But something important happens when a person follows the map of the herd. Their direction begins to feel externally guided. The map tells them where to go. Society tells them what matters. The system tells them what success looks like. And because intelligent people trust logic, they assume the map must be correct. After all, if millions of people are moving in the same direction, there must be a good reason. But Nietzsche warned about something subtle. The herd is very good at deciding what is safe. It is not very good at deciding what is meaningful. Because meaning is personal. Meaning is internal. Meaning cannot be standardized. Two people can live identical lives and experience them completely differently. One may feel deeply fulfilled. The other may feel quietly disconnected. But from the outside, their lives look the same. And that is the quiet danger of approval. Approval evaluates your life from the outside. Meaning evaluates your life from the inside. When approval becomes the compass, people slowly lose contact with that internal signal. They stop asking, what do I actually want? And begin asking, what will make sense to others? What will look impressive? What will be respected? These questions guide many successful lives, but they do not always guide meaningful ones. And over time, the difference between those two things becomes more visible. A person may reach a point in life where everything looks successful. The career is stable. The achievements are real. The respect from others is clear. But something inside feels strangely distant, not dramatic, just quiet. A sense that the life they built was shaped more by external signals than by internal direction. And that realization is unsettling because it raises a difficult possibility. What if the life you built was not chosen freely? What if it was gradually shaped by the things the world rewarded most? And once that thought appears, another question slowly follows. If the path you followed was guided by approval, what would your life look like if it were guided by something else? When a person spends enough years adapting to expectations, something subtle begins to happen. Their identity slowly changes, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually. So gradually that most people never notice it happening. At first, the changes seem small. You adjust your behavior slightly to fit your environment. You speak a certain way at work. You present yourself differently around certain people. You learn what parts of yourself are rewarded and which parts are better kept quiet. None of this feels unusual. In fact, it feels normal because adapting to your environment is part of being human. But over time, these small adjustments begin forming something larger, a version of yourself that is optimized for the system around you, a version that performs well, a version that earns approval, a version that fits the expectations of the world. And the longer you live inside that version, the more natural it begins to feel. Until one day, you realize something strange. You are very good at being the person the world expects, but you are no longer sure who you are outside of that role. This is something the psychologist Carl Jung wrote about when he described the idea of the persona. The persona is the mask people wear in society, not a fake identity, but a social identity, the version of yourself that allows you to function smoothly in the world. Your professional persona, your responsible persona, your successful persona. These masks are not inherently bad. In fact, they are necessary. Without them, social life would be chaotic. But Jung warned that problems begin when a person becomes identified with the mask, when the persona stops being a role and starts becoming the entire identity. At that point, something important disappears. The connection between your external life and your inner self. You continue performing the role that works in the world, but the deeper parts of your personality receive less and less attention. Your curiosity, your imagination, your personal values, the parts of you that once asked deeper questions about life. They don't vanish completely, but they slowly move to the background because the system does not reward them. The system rewards efficiency, reliability, productivity, and the longer a person lives within those expectations, the more their identity drifts toward them. Not because they consciously choose it, but because attention shapes identity. What you repeatedly focus on becomes who you slowly become. If your attention is always directed toward performance, your identity becomes performance. If your attention is always directed toward expectations, your identity becomes expectation. Over time, the internal compass becomes quieter. The voice that once asked, "What excites me? What feels meaningful to me? What kind of person do I want to become?" That voice does not disappear, but it becomes harder to hear because life is full of noise, responsibilities, deadlines, notifications, social comparisons. All of these signals constantly pull attention outward, toward the world, toward performance, toward expectations, and slowly, the inner direction fades until a person reaches a strange point in life. They are competent, reliable, respected. They built a life that functions well, but something about it feels slightly disconnected, almost like they are living a role, not a false role, but a role that slowly replaced the deeper version of themselves. And this is what identity drift looks like. It is not a dramatic crisis. It is not a collapse. It is a quiet shift, a gradual movement away from your original sense of self, toward the version of you that the world finds most useful. And because that version of you works well in the system, it is constantly reinforced. Promotions, opportunities, approval, recognition. All of these signals confirm that the role you are playing is valuable. But value in the system does not always equal meaning in your life. A person can be extremely valuable to the world while feeling strangely disconnected from themselves. And when that disconnection grows strong enough, something unusual begins to happen. Moments of silence start feeling uncomfortable because silence allows the inner voice to return. Questions appear that are usually buried beneath the routine. Questions like, when was the last time I felt excited about my direction? When did my life start feeling like something I manage instead of something I experience? Who am I when I'm not performing this role? These questions can feel unsettling because they expose the distance between the life you built and the self you originally were. And once a person notices that distance, it becomes difficult to ignore because awareness does something powerful. It interrupts identity drift. It reveals the possibility that the role you are playing is not the only version of yourself that exists. And that realization leads to a moment many people experience later in life, a moment of quiet honesty, the moment where someone finally asks themselves a question they avoided for years, not whether their life works, but whether it actually feels like their life. For most people, the realization does not arrive in a dramatic moment. There is no sudden collapse, no obvious crisis. Life continues exactly as it always has. You wake up, go to work, handle responsibilities, move through the routine. Everything looks the same. But one night, something feels different. You're lying in bed. The lights are off. Your phone is finally silent. And for the first time all day, nothing is demanding your attention. No messages, no tasks, no expectations. Just quiet. And in that quiet, your mind begins wandering somewhere it usually avoids. You start thinking about your life, not the next task, not tomorrow's responsibilities, but the direction of your life itself. And suddenly, a strange thought appears. A simple one, but strangely uncomfortable. Is this really the life I wanted? Not a terrible life, not a broken life, just not the one you imagined. You remember a version of yourself from years ago, someone who felt curious, someone who imagined possibilities, someone who believed life would feel more alive than it does right now. That version of you is still familiar, but also distant, almost like remembering someone you used to know. And that memory creates a strange feeling, not regret, something quieter, a sense that somewhere along the way, your life slowly moved in a direction you never consciously chose. You didn't ruin your life. You didn't make terrible decisions. You simply kept making the most reasonable choice each time. The practical opportunity, the responsible path, the option that made sense. And each decision looked correct in the moment. But now, years later, those decisions have accumulated into something larger. A life, a structure, a direction. And suddenly you realize something unsettling. You never actually stopped to ask whether that direction felt meaningful to you. You were too busy adapting, too busy meeting expectations, too busy keeping the system moving forward. So the deeper question stayed silent, until now. Until this quiet moment where your attention finally slows down long enough to see the pattern clearly. And once you see it, it becomes difficult to ignore, because another thought begins forming. A thought that feels both honest and uncomfortable. If nothing changes, this is the life I will keep living. 10 more years, 20 more years, the same direction, the same routine, the same structure. And suddenly the future feels strangely predictable, not terrible, just fixed. And that realization has a powerful effect because it interrupts momentum. Momentum depends on not questioning the path. But this moment forces you to look at it directly, to imagine where it leads. And when a person sees that clearly, something inside them wakes up. Not panic, not rebellion, just awareness. The awareness that the life you built did not appear overnight. It formed slowly, through years of small decisions. And if a life can be built that way, then something else must also be true. A life can change that way too. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually, the same way it was built. One decision at a time. And that realization becomes the turning point. Because the moment a person begins seeing their life clearly, they are no longer drifting through it. They are paying attention. And attention is the beginning of change. Once someone reaches that moment of realization, the mind often jumps to an extreme conclusion. If my life doesn't feel right, I must need to change everything. Quit the job, move somewhere new, start over completely. But real change rarely happens that way. And believing it must can create another trap. Because when change feels too large, people avoid it completely. They tell themselves it's unrealistic, too disruptive, too risky. So, instead of adjusting direction, they return to maintaining the same life. But meaningful change rarely begins with dramatic decisions. It begins somewhere much quieter, with awareness. Awareness changes how you experience your life. Before awareness, you simply move through routines. You respond to responsibilities. You follow the direction momentum created. But once awareness appears, the same life begins to look different. You start noticing things that once felt invisible. Your routines, your patterns, the expectations you automatically fulfill every day. You begin noticing where your attention goes, what consumes your time, what drains your energy, what quietly sparks curiosity again. And this is where something important begins. Because the direction of a person's life is shaped by something most people overlook. Attention. Where your attention repeatedly goes, your life slowly follows. If your attention lives entirely in obligation, life begins to feel mechanical, predictable, heavy. But when attention occasionally returns to curiosity, something begins to open again. Not dramatically, just enough to remind you that life is not only something you maintain, it is something you experience. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius understood this idea deeply. He wrote that the quality of a person's life is shaped by the thoughts they repeatedly return to. In modern terms, your attention slowly builds your identity. What you consistently focus on becomes the direction your life grows toward. If your attention is always fixed on expectations, your identity becomes expectation. If your attention slowly shifts toward meaning, your identity begins moving toward meaning. And that realization changes something important. You do not have to destroy the life you built to begin changing its direction. You simply begin paying attention to different signals. Curiosity, interest, ideas that make you pause, moments that feel alive instead of automatic. These moments are small, easy to ignore, but they matter more than most people realize. Because identity is not built through one decision. It is built through patterns. Patterns of thought, patterns of attention, patterns of choice. The same way your current life was formed, through thousands of small decisions repeated over time. The turning point in life is not a dramatic reinvention. It is the moment a person realizes they are allowed to question the direction of their life, allowed to reconsider, allowed to explore, allowed to give attention to the parts of life that feel meaningful again. Once that permission appears, life begins feeling different. Not easier, not instantly transformed, but more conscious, more intentional. You are no longer simply maintaining a life. You are slowly reshaping it, one small decision at a time, the same way it was originally built. At some point in life, many people reach a quiet realization, not about success, not about failure, but about direction. they begin to see something that was invisible for years. Life does not drift off course through one dramatic mistake. It drifts slowly, through reasonable decisions, through adaptation, through the quiet desire to do what makes sense. And by the time someone notices the direction clearly, years may have already passed. But that realization carries an important truth. The life you are living right now did not appear overnight. It formed gradually through thousands of small choices, through the habits you repeated, through the responsibilities you accepted, through the expectations you followed. And because it was built gradually, it also means something else. Your life is not fixed, not permanently, not completely. The direction of your life is something that continues forming every single day, not through dramatic reinventions, but through attention, through awareness, through the choices that quietly shape the future. Most people imagine life as something that happens in big moments, major decisions, turning points, life-changing events. But in reality, the direction of a life is often decided in very small ways, where you place your attention, what questions you allow yourself to ask, what signals you choose to follow. These small shifts rarely feel important in the moment, but over time, they slowly reshape the path you are walking. And that realization changes something fundamental. You are not simply maintaining a life. You are continuously building it. Every routine, every pattern, every decision. Each one quietly moves your life in a certain direction. Sometimes toward meaning, sometimes toward expectation, sometimes toward something you never fully chose. But awareness changes that process. Because once you begin seeing your life clearly, you are no longer drifting through it unconsciously. You are participating in it. You are shaping it, not perfectly, not instantly, but intentionally. This is something many philosophers have understood throughout history. The Stoics believed that the most important part of a human life is the direction of the mind. Not what happens externally, but how a person chooses to respond to it, what they pay attention to, what values they follow, what direction they slowly build with their daily actions. Because in the end, a meaningful life is not something that appears suddenly. It is something constructed slowly, through awareness, through intention, through the quiet courage to question directions that no longer feel true. And that leads to a question most people avoid for years. Not whether their life works, not whether it looks successful, but something deeper, something more personal. Does this life actually belong to me? If the answer is yes, then the path you are walking is yours, even if it is difficult, even if it is uncertain. But if the answer feels unclear, that uncertainty is not a problem. It is a signal that your life may still be forming, still evolving, still open to change. Because the story of a life is never finished as long as awareness remains, as long as curiosity returns, as long as a person continues asking questions about meaning. And sometimes, the most important moment in someone's life is not when they achieve something impressive. It is the moment they pause long enough to see the direction they are moving clearly, to realize that the life they built can still evolve, can still change, can still move closer to something that feels authentic. And once someone understands that, a new question naturally appears. Not the one they asked before. Not, why did I end up here? But something much more powerful. What direction do I want my life to grow toward next? Because once that question becomes real, your life stops being something that simply happens to you. It becomes something you consciously begin shaping again. And there is one more uncomfortable truth behind all of this. Sometimes, the real problem isn't the life you built. It's the reason you built it that way in the first place. The hidden forces that quietly shaped your decisions. The expectations you absorbed without noticing. The psychological patterns that guided your choices. Understanding those forces changes everything. Because once you see them clearly, you stop repeating them unconsciously. And that is exactly what we need to talk about next.